Right, I'm delighted to still be here with Claire Schrader, although it might not be still be here for people who are just watching this video independently. We met a while ago at, funny enough, an event which was for Creative, the holistic media group, I think it was, and that's where we met. Your work, fascinating work, starting off in acting and theatre, then drawn to healing, trained in drama therapy, author of ritual theatre, and you were telling me a little bit about how you became interested in healing because you, as an actress, needed, or as a human being, needed healing, so you went on that particular journey. And we were talking a while ago a little bit about the fact that actually, for the most part, actors aren't necessarily taught how to handle the emotional stuff of acting. And you were saying it's partly because it's seen as a job. And actually, I guess if you think about it, isn't that kind of extraordinary in a way? If you think about it in a way, because actors have such an incredible impact on our lives through the power of their acting, which impacts on us and our lives. So tell me a little bit about how difficult or traumatic potentially that kind of stuff is, and what your experience maybe of it is, because I just think this is a fascinating area, because many of us do know, isn't it? I'm from my own background area of singing, lots of singers, because of the nature of the life, the lifestyle, and sometimes, all sorts of things, and a lot of it externally can't necessarily handle it. Maybe it's kind of slightly different to being an actor, but we certainly know that there are all sorts of pressures. Tell us a little bit about those, relating it back to actors and this kind of stuff and this emotional stuff and all of this difficulty in being able to handle that.
Yeah. You do the most long questions.
So I
could answer several times over. So I think, first of all, certainly because I used to work in drama schools, and I think the kind of people that are attracted to acting, and I think a lot of them are like me, not all of them like me, but a lot, or shall we say, the more sensitive people, they're drawn to theatre because there is this stuff in them that wants expression. And I think it's easy for them to be able to manage. For instance, I know, certainly when I was a playwright, and the kind of actors that, that were the best actors often were the people that were the most vulnerable, emotionally vulnerable. So, that's why I think it is of concern, shall we say, it's of concern that there isn't more support. It's very, actors have to deal with incredibly difficult situations. They're constantly being rejected.
When they go to auditions,
they're going through, they're going through hell and high water. And so it takes a sort of really strong individual to survive all that. And I think a lot of people don't survive.
And it's a very uncertain, and it's just a very uncertain career. It can be very youth-orientated and so on. It may not, some people are very lucky to have a long career. Lots of people may have quite a short career. May well be somebody then who's coming along and, and that they're seen to no longer have a space. Whereas most of us in our own careers, hopefully we might be able to be established and still be able to continue our career until, so there's all these particular challenges, plus dealing with this very emotional stuff. I was struck by what you were saying about how sometimes often very sensitive people are drawn to that. And I guess was that true for you? Is that how you felt? You were saying lots of people were sensitive, and you were saying, and that where there's maybe not being able to express, and so therefore being drawn to acting because it gives the space to be able to express.
Yes, I think particularly for me, because I'm an introvert, I turn everything in and I process everything in, and so being able to get things out, to get my emotions out, to get my expression out was very good for me. And I think, a lot of introverts are fantastic actors because they're able to go deeply within themselves, they're able to really feel deeply into themselves. And I think it does, to be able to bring out those depths of emotion if you're playing some of the really powerful, if you're playing Lady Macbeth or, any of those sort of like really big roles, where do you find those resources from? And actors are trained to delve into those parts of themselves. And it's not easy, you know, it's not easy to go on tour with and doing something like that night and night. That's why probably a lot of the most extraordinary work is done in films. You know,
because what's the distinction that you draw there? Because once you've done it once, it's done. Well, I mean, once you've got the takes and so on, it's done. You're not having to relive it night after night after night after night.
Well, in a film, I know kind of like, because I take a lot of interest in those DVDs where you get the bonuses, where you hear the actors talking about their process and things like that. And I know for them, it is about, they can go to those depths. They can, you know, they can spend the whole time on set sort of kind of like preparing themselves, being in that, knowing that they're going to do that, you know, they're going to have a number of takes, but, you know, they're not going to have to go and do it night after night on a stage.
One of the things that's fascinating about what you're saying is that, and I guess linking to the conversation we were having before about the power of drama in terms of healing, is it seems to me there's a bit of a paradox here, isn't there? On the one hand, we know that drama and so on can be so healing. You know that through the work that you do, really helping people to overcome all sorts of stuff and to express the conscious and the subconscious through acting and to connect and to feel better about themselves, to fully inhabit themselves and all this kind of stuff. And at the same time, lots of this stuff can be tough to deal with. Tell me a little bit about your thoughts on that, because presumably you see a little bit of both sides, don't you? You see people who are wanting to be able to connect, who are having whatever challenges they have. Perhaps, you know, they're a lay person, they're a member of the public. But I get the feeling that you do. I get the feeling is it the case that you work with some perhaps performers and they're needing to go through stuff from a different kind of space. Can you tell me a little bit about that? And do you see that that's an interesting mix between how does it the power of this stuff, and how does one manage that kind of stuff?
Gosh, I don't really know how to answer that. Because actually I don't think there's really any difference between somebody who's a performer dealing with this stuff and somebody who's not. What is an advantage with the performer is an advantage and a disadvantage. An advantage in that if they are able to really get in touch with their real emotions and use those and express those. I mean, this can be. I mean, I love working with performers. I mean, I don't always work with performers by any means, but they have that.
Yes.
You know, they have that language of the drama that they can express that, and it's completely different from what they do when they're on stage, because that's a job, that's something they're doing for an audience. I suppose this focus is, what is it that your spirit, your soul needs to express right now in this moment, and they can play. I mean, for instance, the character they have, they can interpret that in any way they want. So they're really following their deepest impulses and serving themselves.
I loved what you were saying there. I loved what you said, because I think it was beautiful, because you first of all pointed out that there is the emotional stuff of life that everybody, whoever it is that they are, have. Then there's an actor, it might be their job that's around there, but they will still have emotional stuff. So that's really interesting, isn't it? And I get the sense that if one's aware and mindful about that emotions and how one sits with that emotions, then be it an actor who needing to act or singer needing to sing, then that can happen, and to be able to honour what you're doing and to be at peace with yourself and to grow. And similarly, I guess, with a member of the public. And, you know, I would so, you know, resonate with that from my own experience in terms of my background in singing and performing, and how I feel about those kind of things now, because I think that when one is aware of the emotional stuff of life, it means that actually I'm singing, I can really appreciate the emotion, whatever that emotion is, live it, be it, the richness of that, whatever it is, emotion, without it being, you know, giving it what it requires, and then it's done.
Yes.
Just like the rain's gone, now the sun is here, and then if it's something else, being present for that as well, and a real appreciation for all those different elements of life, and the empathy. I mean, what we used in a talk we were having just before, that empathy. So I think what you're saying here is really, really, really fascinating. I'm curious to know that when you're working...
Let me just pick up on that, because it's as you say, it's cleansing.
Yes.
So, and this is why drama is so powerful, because there's been some scientific research done that shows that we, from the sort of daily stresses of our lives, we build up these I think they're called peptides, which are literally poisons that live in our cells. And so when we're expressing powerful emotions in a theatre context, we are cleansing ourselves of those emotions. Yes. And it's as I say, it's aesthetic. So you're giving, you're serving the audience. You're giving something to the audience, so it's not personal. And I think that is why Sue Jennings talks about dramatic distance.
So Sue Jennings, for people who don't know, Sue
Jennings is the founder of drama therapy. She developed drama therapy 30, 40, 50 years ago, and it evolved over a period of time. But she talks about this thing that, this is why drama therapy is so good with trauma, is because when we're going through... Is that the end of it?
No, I think that's the noise coming from somewhere else.
Right, okay. when people have experienced a trauma, if you try to get them reenact that trauma, it would be the most destructive thing that you could do to them. You would be putting them in the most uncomfortable situation. They will not be able to do it for a start. However, if they're working on and they don't even know that that's what they're working on. They're working on a piece of expressing a myth or a story. And as I said, that spirit in them is sort of saying, I want these, I need this, I need this. And they might find themselves in the middle of that suddenly that something is being released. They can feel this. They can feel something. They can feel the power of that, perhaps in their solar plexus, and they won't even know at the time what's really happening. But what she's saying is that because it's not their story, it's somebody else's story. It's maybe a Shakespeare play, or it's a story of Jason and the Argonauts, or whatever the story it is. They can identify really, and they can really get into that. And then actually, they don't even know it, but they're actually getting right close to that place in them where they may be blocked. And so that emotion is being released.
It's being lifted.
Those toxins are being shifted, and they will be feeling weird afterwards.
And so bringing it back to, relating it to the performers, and those who have wrestled and struggled for a long time, and we both will know actors or singers or performers who will often have all sorts of issues and challenges in their own life because they're not working, or their careers stopped, or they have been successful and they're not successful now, and all sorts of other stuff, and all sorts of stuff that may well really prior to that their need perhaps to act. Tell me a little bit about those times when you do work with people in the acting profession and where they're going through this. I can imagine that sometimes they're doubly struck by the power of this, because on the one hand they're going through a process which enables them to, and on the other hand perhaps they're realising even more deeply the power and the gift of the work that it is that they do, and how potent that can be. And I would imagine this. Does that happen? Do you find that happens?
When I've worked with actors, well, first of all, actors, they are, it's always said that, if you go and see a cast of people doing a tragedy, where they're doing a lot of this kind of really kind of difficult, awful stuff, everybody will be going out to the pub afterwards and having a great time, because there's something very empowering and healing and just beneficial about playing all that dark stuff. And you go to a comedy, as I said, you go to the comedy and everybody's depressed, It doesn't necessarily work that way. I mean, a lot of comedians, they're incredibly funny, but they're actually depressed.
Yeah.
What I've found with actors is that when they are working on themselves, it is really very different. In which the case they are like anybody. They are maybe able to also access and express things that a layperson might find harder to do. They will have a vehicle and a language to express that. But I've been fascinated by what comes. I mean, particularly when I work one-to-one with people are sort of kind of working with their inner cast of characters, you know, because we've all got, you know, really different parts of ourselves that are kind of warring with ourselves, you know, our conscience and our, you know, there's all those different parts of ourselves. There's parts of ourselves that got buried. So working with that is fascinating.
It's wonderful. Well, it must be just wonderful, and I guess for you it must be such an interesting journey, because this journey from finding yourself as an actress, moving into playwriting, finding that you're drawn to this healing aspect and being able to do this healing work. Have you found that there's a quite fascinating story in terms of how your life's panned out as somebody who themselves actor, finding themselves in this world and then they're healing? Do you find that there's quite an extraordinary roundedness to the work that you're doing in the world that you're in?
I think what's been very powerful for me is, you know, I went from being on the stage to helping things happen on the stage, and now I really love empowering or facilitating people. I find that a lot more satisfying. And it used to be that I was kind of like, I had to be on stage, because I had so much that I needed to express. I
understand
but I think that as my journey's gone on, being on the other side has been far more fulfilling for me and richer. And I never tire. You know, it's not a question of I want to get up there and perform. I love seeing people free themselves. And I sense that's you do in your work as well. It's sort of like seeing people's potential come out and seeing somebody who maybe is really inhibited or you know, sort of surprise themselves with, suddenly they're doing something that they never thought they would ever do.
That's right.
And they you know, they've only been in the room an hour. And suddenly they're behaving in ways, or I mean, for instance, I'm thinking of a young woman who's got social anxiety, acute social anxiety, and suddenly having that breakthrough moment when she's sort of like, she can allow herself to express herself. You know, that to me is deeply satisfying.
Well, wonderful. It's been deeply satisfying to listen to you and to talk about healing in the context of performing. It's been an absolute pleasure. Again, I just want to wish you all the best with your book, Ritual Theatre, and the work that you do with the public and with performers. Long may it continue. I'm just about to turn off the camera, and I just want to thank you very much for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you this afternoon.
Yeah, thank you, Rasheed. Thank you.